Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today, I am going to be talking about L5R's Shadowlands supplement book. Legend of the Five Rings, I've talked about before. I've reviewed a couple of books in that line. Um, the Shadowlands is the portion down to the south, kind of the southwest of Rokugan, the kingdom in which the game takes place. The Shadowlands is evil. It is full of demons and monsters, and it's a really fascinating part of the setting and a key part of the setting. But it's a part that's hard to use because everyone in Rokugan, everyone in the role-playing game, they are so concerned about avoiding corruption, about avoiding taint, that it can be very difficult to convince anyone to cross the Great Wall and go down into the Shadowlands and adventure. And yet, the second supplement that they have put out is the Shadowlands book. Yay! So, we're going to talk about what this book includes and how you can actually use it. And it is actually far more usable, in my opinion, than you might think it is. One of the keys to it, one of the most important little sidebars in the entire book, is one where it talks about the land, the terrain, as an enemy, and says, don't overdo it. If merely existing in the Shadowlands is enough to instantly taint the characters, to corrupt the characters, if they're being attacked on every side, not just from monsters, but from the air itself, the ground, the water, and everything, no one will ever go there. You won't be able to use it in stories. It has to be, you have to think of the terrain as an enemy, and remember that in order to make a role-playing game fun, the enemy has to be overcomeable. That is my new word for the day. Okay, so we're going to get into that. Let's talk a little bit about what the Shadowlands are. So in the cosmology of Legend of the Five Rings, way back in the day, there were 9 kami. They're the gods. They, came down, they fell from the celestial heavens down to the mortal realm. And that's where a lot of the major clans got their names. And that's, they established the empire, they established the rules and Bushido and all these other things. There was one of them named Fu Leng. And Fu Leng was, as is often the case in religious cosmologies, not inherently evil, but jealous. He was second best at everything. He was brave, but one of the other commies was braver. He was smart, but one of the other commies was smarter. And so he's incredibly, hugely capable, and honestly, probably the best all-arounder, so to speak. But he was very jealous that he never got to be first in anything. And so he was jealous, he was angry, he had all these kind of dark emotions going on. And then when he fell, everyone fell from heaven, he was kind of pulled towards the realm of Jigoku, which is, just like the celestial heavens and the mortal realm, it was an extra realm. It was an realm of evil and monsters. And he actually punched through the mortal realm itself. And so there's a hole in Rokugan, there's a hole in the world that is called the Festering Pit of Fu Leng. And so when we say that Shadowlands is full of monsters and that it is corrupt and evil, we mean that in the most religiously literal way that we can. Okay? It's not just that it's kind of dark or there's a lot of monsters there. Like, the core of it is an actual portal to hell in which monsters are constantly coming out and causing problems. So that's where it came from, and it's a really kind of dark, horrible idea. Your characters should probably never go to the festering pit of Fu Leng, but all of the influence that it causes is around, and it's causing other problems. So keep in mind what I said. Don't overdo it, but absolutely make this Shadow Realm I guess what I'm trying to say is incentivize people to go there, because there's a lot of great stories that can be told there. And the further you get away from the human realm, the further you get away from the wall, the darker it gets and the more horrible it gets. So the first thing that you're going to encounter, kind of the most basic level of what's in the Shadowlands, are monsters. And they have a lot of really fascinating stuff in the book. And some of the monsters are very straightforward. There's one called a Gashadokuro, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, that is basically a gigantic skeleton. Okay, we've seen that kind of thing before. It is an innately Japanese monster, but we kind of understand it in the Western world, right? It's not too far outside the realm of our experience. Then there is another one that is called a Wanyudo, or a Waryudo? Wanyudo. And this one is also a kind of distinct Japanese folk monster, but a really interesting one. It's basically an evil burning wagon wheel with a human head at the center. It's like an ox cart wheel that is on fire, and it's a ghost. It's this evil spirit, and it rolls around. And there's legends, in medieval Japan about a woman who looked out the window and saw this Wanyudo spirit go by, and the face in the middle of it said, "Don't look at me, look at your child." And she turned around and saw that her baby was laying in a puddle of blood and its legs had been torn off. And she looked back out the window and this Wanyudo was eating the baby's legs. Like nasty, gross stuff, but also very distinctly Japanese, which is kind of what we're going for when we play Legend of the Five Rings, which is awesome. So one of my very favorite monsters in this book is actually not Japanese, it's Malaysian, and it is called a Penanggalan. Penanggalan. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is what looks like a person during the day, but at night, the head lifts off, pulls all of the viscera and the internal organs up out of the body. The body just kind of this husk that falls asleep. And so this floating head with all the viscera hanging down hides the body to keep it safe, and then goes flying around in the night, catching people with its organs and eating them. And that's a nasty, nasty monster. But you can actually throw it at your players if you play Legend of the Five Rings and get this Shadowlands book. So there's a lot of cool monsters, there's a lot of cool flavor, and distinctly Asian flavor, which is the hallmark of Legend of the Five Rings. So the book includes a lot of other areas as well. There's specific locations within the Shadowlands. There's something called the Tomb of Fulang, and they don't actually know if it's a tomb, and they don't know if Fulang is there. They know nothing about it. It's just a scary place that looks like it might be a tomb, and anyone who goes in doesn't come out. Believe it or not, there's lots of stories you can tell with that tomb. There's one of my very favorite ones is a grove of trees that has paper lanterns, and it looks very inviting. And you can go in and be safe there during the night. Or can you? I'm not going to tell you, but you can make your own assumptions. One of the key locations in the Shadowlands is called Daylight Castle. So right next to the Shadowlands down in the south, in fact, I'm going to show you the map, okay? And I don't have a PDF, so you have to look at this thing. Here we go. Here is a map of the Shadowlands, okay? So you can see down here is all the Shadowlands, and then up here is the wall, the Caillou Wall. I am really genuinely bad at reversing my hand. There we go. And then up over here is the Crab Lands, okay? So the Crab clan is right next to the Shadowlands, and their identity as a clan is defined by the constant struggle against the Shadowlands. The wall that they built was not built in the beginning. And so as that festering pit of Fulang started spitting out more demons and monsters, and the people were fighting against it, the Crab clan was constantly trying to fight them back, they lost a major war. Daylight Castle used to be the home of the Hiruma family, which is a big, huge part of the Crab Clan. And they were kind of right there on the front line, and then they lost, and the border got pushed back pretty significantly. And so it's been abandoned now. All of the ancestral Hiruma lands are lost, including Daylight Castle, which was the seat of their power and their family and their legacy. They since built the wall, and it's this big kind of Great Wall of China analog that exists there. It's the largest structure, the largest building anywhere in Rokugan by orders of magnitude. But if you cross over it, one of the things you can find is that old Hiruma castle called Daylight Castle. And in fact, they have a published adventure called Mask of the Oni that is completely centered around Daylight Castle. And I will get to that in the future. It's on the calendar, but we're not going to talk about it today. So, let's talk instead about the Nezumi. That's one of the other cool things in this book. Just like the Hiruma used to live in what was formerly peaceful and has now been conquered by the Shadowlands, so too did the Nezumi. Nezumi are rat people, kind of humanoid rats. Another common kind of folk tale figure in Japan. And these, the Nezumi used to have this whole civilization. And one of the things you can find as you explore the Shadowlands is their old kind of ruins. And they still live there today, but as nomads. They are good guys who can't really live in human lands because they're rat people, and Rokugani are super racist. But actually, a lot of the crab do have good relations with the Nezumi because they meet them when they cross into the Shadowlands, and they know them to be good. And so they kind of become friends. One of the new advantages you can gain in this book is a friend of the Nezumi. So anyway, there's these nomadic rat people that are in the Shadowlands, and they can help. They can have their own little problems. They can be involved in your stories. There's a lot of different tribes of them, different kind of subgroups of the Nezumi. They're really fascinating. So that's cool. In addition to talking about lots of different groups of Nezumi, the book, of course, goes into the Crab Clan pretty extensively. And we get a lot of really good setting information and details on all 5 of the Crab Clan families, and things of, we get stats for some of their major people. We get information about their own, how each family relates to the Shadowlands and what each family does. Obviously, all these families are covered in the core book, but they get a lot more attention in the Shadowlands book because the Crab Clan and the Shadowlands are inseparable in many ways. Same thing with the wall. One of the things I love in here, let's see if I can find it. I don't know if I can. There we go. I had a bookmark in there. The wall has this watchtower. So there's a ton of stuff you can do with the wall. Like I said, it's the largest structure in Rokugan. And so not only do they have maps of like specific watchtowers in there, but there are rumors, and there are character stats, and there are adventure hooks and adventure seeds for the wall, for the families, for the Nezumi, for everything. And there's also a good description of patrols. The Crab Clan and their allies don't just guard the wall passively. They send patrols out into the Shadowlands all the time to find stuff, to retrieve stuff, to scout, to do what they can that way, kind of an active defense. And so if you want to include those in your game, you absolutely can, which is awesome. Chapter 2 of this book, that's all Chapter 1. Chapter 2 talks about the Falcon. Each L5R supplement comes with a minor clan, including their families and some schools that they participate in. In the Shadowlands book, that is the Falcon clan. They live kind of off up to the slightly northwest of the Crab, and so they deal not directly with demons and the wall the way the Crab do, but instead the region that they live in is very close to the spirit realm. And so the Falcon clan kind of specializes in spirits. They're ghost hunters. And they're kind of ghost liaisons as well, because not all spirits are evil. And so if you need someone who can talk to spirits, Scorpion's got a couple of good schools for this, but Falcon, that's their specialty. And it's really neat. Further, the rest of Chapter 2 is filled with more character options. There are new schools for almost every clan. I don't think it's quite all of them, but most of them. Most of those schools relate in some way to spirits or ghosts or demons, but again, not all of them. It's just kind of new options you can use. And then there are new techniques. There's new advantages. There's new disadvantages. There's new heritages. Tons of options for character creation and for character progress. As you're leveling up, you can gain these new cool things. There's also a ton of gear. New armor, new weapons, new supplies. There's rules for kind of blessed artifacts and also evil artifacts that you might find while you're exploring the Shadowlands. And those, again, will include good adventure hooks to use around them. Like, how can you use this horrible evil thing that you just found, or how will that mess with you? So it's great. There's also a lot of Mayho techniques. Mayho is dark magic, blood magic kind of stuff. And I do believe the core book includes a little bit. This includes a lot more. If you want to use Mayho with your NPCs, or if you've got a character that wants to become corrupted and become a Mayho Tsukai and start using dark magic, this book can let you do that. Though the book also does counsel you and say, before you allow this kind of stuff, make sure that you're ready for how it's going to change the campaign, because it is going to change the campaign a lot once you start corrupting people. And that's what the final chapter is actually all just game master advice. Not only how can you incorporate the Shadowlands into your campaign, how can you incorporate corruption into your campaign? How do you handle it when characters become corrupted? What are the options to heal them? And what are the options to actually just play through the actual fall, the downfall of a character, morally speaking? Which is a fascinating kind of story to tell. There's also a whole section in here about horror. Legend of the Five Rings does not have to be a horror game, and it is not intrinsically about it, but you 100% can include it, and it is a very horrific setting, as you will know if you listen to the first part of this review when I talked about the different kinds of monsters that are there. And so the Chapter 3 actually has a pretty good section on different kinds of horror, different flavors of horror, why and how to incorporate those into your game so that you've got something really interesting. I like it a lot. I am a horror author, as I say at the beginning of every review that I do. And so this kind of stuff really hits my wheelhouse really hard. In fact, one of the most fantastic horror RPG moments I've ever had was in a game of L5R, when they were basically just following a ghost. And the moment they realized that the thing they were following was a ghost, it was a very kind of visceral, chill up the spine moment. And when you're able to do that in a game, that says so much about that game and the environment that it can trap the players in, which is really great. So anyway, Shadowlands book is a wonderful book, and it hits a lot of my buttons really well, and it's just a really well-produced thing. It is full of options for players, full of ideas for game masters, and, as is the case with the Emerald Empire book that I reviewed earlier, almost every section of it includes usable stats and adventure hooks, so it's not just information, it's information that you can very easily include in your storytelling and include in your game. So, Legend of the Five Rings, Shadowlands expansion is awesome. I hope you get a chance to try it, and I will see you on my next review. Bye!